Alright guys, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about, does underpowering your subs damage them? So let's get into today's video. Alright, so first things first, the real reason why we're talking about this is because I had two massive speakers in the 12 box, and now I have the Sundown XV3 in one side, and I have that wired down to 1 ohm connected to the amp. But obviously that's a dual 12 box, so all I did was I left one of the massive speakers in it and I just have it disconnected, so it's pretty much just a dummy speaker, and the XV3 is just pushing it in and out. I'm going to show you guys that in a little bit. Box wise, it definitely leaves a lot to be desired, so I'm gonna have a box built for it. But just to prove my point that underpowering the sub does absolutely nothing to it, you're not gonna smell any coil, you're not gonna fry anything, you're not gonna mess up your amp or anything like that. That XV3 that is rated at 2000 watts RMS, and I've seen a lot of people run 5000 watt amps on those things and it does nothing to them. So they are very underrated. I'm eventually going to put a 3K amp on it and run it at like 2500 watts, somewhere around there. But for right now, for the purpose of this video, we have a, I believe that's a Soundstream Nano 1000 watt amp, and it really does push it really good, but that's what's capping off our music or dB potential right now, that 1000 watt amp. The massive speakers didn't get as loud as that Sundown with 1000 watts, which is kind of strange because it's double the cone area, but I guess with the wattage and everything else, it just doesn't stack up to the quality of a Sundown. That's one speaker is about 700 bucks right now online. But yeah, we're gonna take the car to one of my friends, and he has an SMD. He's gonna put the clip meter on it, the wattage meter on it, and he's gonna tell us how much watts we're actually getting to that speaker, and also if we're clipping it, because the amp doesn't have enough wattage to actually push that speaker out full. So you can think you're making the speaker itself louder, and it's actually going to sound louder, but if you're clipping the signal, that's where you're going to run the risk of damaging an underpowered sub. You want it to get as loud as possible, but obviously you don't have the wattage potential, or you don't have the electrical headroom to do it. And the only way you're going to mess it up is if you clip that signal. So we're going to check, make sure we're not clipping the signal. We're going to actually check to see how much watts we're getting out of that 1000 watt amp, because as you guys know, sometimes you get way less. You can get like 800 and something watts out of a 1000 watt amp without running it hot and stuff like that. So we're going to check just to verify and find out if we're clipping this thing or if we're running it at any risk. So before we get this thing tested, we actually made a few changes back here. We already had the 0 gauge from the smaller battery ran here. We have 0 gauge from the forward battery connecting to the back battery. So electrical wise, we're pretty good. The only thing that I need to upgrade is these speaker wise. I need to upgrade those to 8 gauge instead of that 10 gauge. But we have the 1000 Nano Soundstream amp, which is a beast of an amp if you ask me. We have a custom box, but the custom box was it was like one of those prefab boxes, so I had the massive speakers in there. They sounded amazing. I used to point them backwards towards make them shoot towards the trunk, but the car is kind of like built so tight that I had to flip it around and face the port towards the vehicle so that a lot of that bass can travel on the inside. I actually still have my armrest from the rear seat laid down so that a lot of that bass can come through. So this is how I have the speakers in here now. That's the Sundown XV3 12 inch, and then that is the one massive speaker. I don't have the massive speaker hooked up like I said, and I have the Sundown wired down to 1 ohm going into a 1 ohm stable amp. The port is right over there. Obviously this is not the right box for this speaker. We're gonna have a box built, and we're gonna give it the proper hertz that it's designed for, and also the proper port length that it's designed for. But for right now, we're gonna test it. We have it massively underpowered at probably less than 1000 watts, and she doesn't give me any issues whatsoever. The only way you're gonna run into issues underpowering a sub is if you run it above clipping. You don't want to send it any clipping signals. All right, so as you guys have just seen, I actually ran into a second issue with my setup, and the issue I ran into was impedance rise or box rise. Also, I have to get rid of those bolts that I use to run the wires like through the box. I'm going to get rid of those and just actually run my own wires coming from the speaker going straight to the amp, and hopefully as soon as that amp sees actual 1 ohm or at least 1.3 1.5, we're gonna get a lot more wattage out of that thing, because it's actually giving us rated power at 2 ohms. At 2 ohms, that amp is supposed to give us about 600, and it's giving us, with a clean signal from the head unit, it's giving us close to 500. So that's really good. But I'm super surprised at how nice and how loud this thing gets even at that low of a wattage, and it's super impressive. But it's not going to damage the speaker. If you notice, as long as that clipping light does not come on, you're not going to damage the speaker. So you can put a pretty big sub in and do what I'm doing, which is leveling up like every paycheck. Not everyone is rich, so if you do something one paycheck, you do the next thing. So you get a speaker, get a box, get a proper amp, and then eventually you're gonna give it the proper wattage that it wants. But you're definitely not going to hurt your sub by underpowering it. Now the next move for this build, this is an audio build we're doing on this car. The next move is I'm going to eliminate those bolts and do my best to get that impedance to drop. That resistance, I want it down to at least 1.5 ohms, if not 1.3 when I reach to the amp, so that the amp sees 1 ohm, so that it gives us rated power at 1 ohm. But that's all I have for you guys for today. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Always remember, don't drift without your dreams, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.